Sarah's parents chose James's award over visiting her after a car crash. Now they want her savings to bail him out of a fraud scandal. She refused. About 2 weeks ago, Sarah, 32F, was involved in a horrific car accident. Another automobile struck her from the side as she was making her way home from work. The force of the impact caused her automobile to overturn. She was later told by the paramedics that she was fortunate to be alive. She ultimately needed emergency surgery due to internal bleeding, 2 cracked ribs, and a damaged leg. After the procedure, she stayed in the hospital for a week to recuperate and try to make sense of things. It was difficult to be in the hospital, both mentally and physically. All she wanted was for her parents to come see her as soon as she woke up. She assumed that as soon as they learned about the accident, they would rush over. Even though she didn't anticipate them staying the entire time, she would have been so grateful for a visit. Rather, they were absent for days. She waited for them to stop by, or at least give her a call, but they didn't show up. Before she even received a text from them, she believes it was 4 days. To answer your question, Mr. and Mrs. Carter were told what had transpired. The hospital informed Sarah that they had contacted them several times and that they are her emergency contacts. A day following her admission, the hospital was able to contact her parents, but the nurses reported that they appeared unconcerned about the situation. That obviously upset her a lot, but she attempted to explain it away by saying that perhaps they were too busy or that something else had come up. Fortunately, her phone was still with her because her possessions survived the collision. Every day, at intervals of 5 to 6 hours, she texted her parents, but she never heard back. In the hospital, every day was a nightmare. She attempted to give Mr. and Mrs. Carter a lot of wiggle room because she really wanted to see people she knew, but it became more difficult every hour. Fortunately, she wasn't entirely alone because her pals, who reside in other states, were able to get in touch with some family members who live nearby. A family acquaintance came to visit her on the 6th day in the hospital and remarked in passing how wonderful it was that James was receiving recognition for his efforts at an award ceremony. Sarah didn't know what she was discussing. The acquaintance filled her in, but she appeared perplexed that Sarah didn't know. As it happens, Mr. and Mrs. Carter didn't come to see her. Instead, they were at James's awards ceremony. They were aware that she was in the hospital, but instead of helping her through a difficult period, they decided to attend James's special occasion. They were so busy getting ready for his big event that they had taken so long to get in touch with her. They were more concerned with their perception of his ceremony than with their daughter's injury. Let her be clear before anyone accuses her of jealously admiring James. She doesn't find it hard to see why they would be proud of him. She is aware that he is gifted and has put a lot of effort into all that he has accomplished. He has always been the golden child, which is the problem. Since they were little, he has received nothing but acclaim for everything he does. While she has largely gone unnoticed, he currently works for a large corporation and is really successful. Therefore, this award meant a lot to him. However, Sarah was actually convalescing from surgery. A visit, or even a phone call to check on her, would have been the very least they could have done. She only wanted Mr. and Mrs. Carter to be concerned about her, and that was about all she was asking for. They didn't even blink an eyelash when she could have died that day. She was angry and humiliated. She attempted but was unable to explain her parents' actions. She then made the decision to contact them and let them know how offended she was. She texted them to express her disbelief that they prioritized James's prize over her well-being. She expressed her pain at them, not even checking in on her. She didn't have to wait long for an answer for the first time since the accident. And to be honest, she wishes they hadn't responded. Their words simply made her feel worse. At first, they attempted to defend their behavior by claiming that they couldn't miss James's award because it was a once-in-a-lifetime accomplishment. She informed them that if they had only taken the time to come see her sooner, they wouldn't have missed the event at all. After a while, they gave up trying to argue with her and told her that it was pointless to waste time coming to see her while James was out there making the family proud. That hurt more than words can express. It seemed like they only considered her as an afterthought. She wishes she could say that their behavior astonished her, but it has always been like this. James was perfect as a child. Every action he took was praised. Every accomplishment he made, whether it was a scholarship, a fancy job, or perfect grades was celebrated. In the meantime, Sarah was constantly in the background. It was never good enough. Even when she performed well, every error she made was viewed as a disaster, and she never received the same level of help. She had the impression that they had already determined she was a failure, and that nothing she did would change their thoughts. A week after James's award ceremony, Mr. and Miss S. Carter unexpectedly arrived at the hospital. Sarah was initially perplexed because, following their last talk, she had given up on contacting them. She knew her parents well enough to understand that they weren't worried when they came to see her. They arrived with phony smiles on their faces and bouquets in their hands. They made an effort to strike up a conversation about how she was doing, but it was obvious that their thoughts were elsewhere. She advised them to just say what was on their mind, because she could tell that whatever they were thinking about was going to irritate her. The fact that they showed so little concern for her survival was offensive enough. She didn't need their phony pity. She didn't have to exert much effort. When Miss S. Carter learned that James had been arrested for fraud at his company, she burst into tears. It turned out that James was at the heart of a huge fraud scheme that was discovered by the corporation he worked for. He had been directing funds into his personal investments by falsifying the company's accounts. Following an internal investigation, everything was turned over to the police, and he was apprehended after a co-worker alerted the superiors. He is currently being charged with major offenses like wire fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. Mr. and Miss S. Carter had apparently already spent a large portion of their cash on hiring attorneys for him. They came to Sarah because they didn't have enough money left to pay his bail. They asked her to utilize the money she had saved up from her work as a project manager at an business to help him out. Additionally, they asked whether she knew anyone who could help in any manner or pull some strings. She had the impression that she was merely a tool to clean up James's mess, not even their daughter. She continued to experience mental and physical pain. It was unbelievable to her that they would turn to her for assistance after everything. It was like being slapped across the face. When she was lying in a hospital bed after surgery, afraid and alone, they didn't give a damn. But now that their favorite child was in danger, they needed her. She felt bad about it. Perhaps she ought to have assisted for the benefit of her family. The other side of her, though, was angry. The same James who has always had everything handed to him. Why should she save him? Mr. and Miss S. Carter have always protected him, so he has never experienced any repercussions. Now they expect her to do the same. She informed them that she would not assist. She said that even if she did have the money, she wouldn't feel obligated to help him out. She made it obvious who they cared about more and reminded them that they hadn't even come to see her yet. They insisted that she was being self-centered and that family should be together. She couldn't get herself to care, even though they said she would regret not helping James. To be honest, James has always taken precedence over her. She was never enough for them, no matter how hard she tried. They wanted her to simply forget all the times they disregarded her, left her out, and made her feel unimportant now that they needed something from her. She felt in control of the situation for the first time in her life, and she wasn't going to let that go. She's lying in her hospital bed right now, feeling a mixture of anger and remorse. Since she said no, Mr. and Miss S. Carter haven't spoken to her, and she knows they're upset, but she simply can't bring herself to care any longer. She's done trying to gain their approval. She's wasted too much time. Hate her for standing up to her parents after everything they've done to her and not helping James. They keep repeating that family should always remain together. Therefore, she feels like she might be the villain. However, the way they have treated her throughout her life, and particularly now, is something she simply cannot get over. She feels like she's had enough, but she's not sure what to do. First update. Hello everybody. Sarah wanted to express her gratitude for your support of her initial article. She was able to maintain her position because of that. Although she didn't anticipate updating so quickly, a lot has transpired since then. She was eventually released from the hospital a few days after Mr. and Miss S. Carter arrived. She can walk, but her leg fracture requires crutches, and breathing is still difficult as her ribs heal. Going home, finding some serenity, and escaping the turmoil were all things she was looking forward to. The moment she arrived at her apartment, that hope was dashed. She knew things wouldn't go well as soon as she spotted Mr. and Miss S. Carter, who were waiting for her just outside her door. They must have called the hospital to find out the precise time of her discharge because she hadn't told them. They wasted no time at all. They began hammering her before she could even remove her keys. They were incensed and informed her that by not helping James, she had gone too far. It's the most irate she's ever seen them. They seemed more unhappy with her for refusing than they were with James's deception. They talked endlessly about how family should always come first. They said she was selfish and vindictive. They claimed that she was using this circumstance as a means of exacting revenge on them because she had resentment toward James. They didn't care that she was still recovering from her near-death experience a week prior. They simply viewed her as a barrier to their beloved son's rescue. They had the audacity to say that they expected her to step up now. They said that this was her opportunity to show that she wasn't a letdown and that she could be part of the family by acting morally. It was crazy. They essentially acknowledged that she wasn't related to them and that helping James was the only way she could make amends. Things truly took a turn for the worse when she informed them outright that she wouldn't do it. Miss S. Carter began crying at her door, screaming things like, "We've already lost one child, and now we're going to lose two, and you're punishing us for loving him more." In contrast, Mr. Carter simply became more irate and wasn't attempting to shame her. He repeatedly accused her of being cold-hearted and self-centered, claiming that she had no regard for the family and that she would regret it once they were gone. To be honest, it was everything she could do to not lose it. She was told she was a bad person for not cleaning up James's mess, even though she was already fatigued from the hospital stay and could not stand on her crutches. The fact that Mr. and Miss S. Carter intentionally treated James better and that they love him more than her just served to exacerbate the situation. She didn't give up, though. She warned them that she would call the police if they didn't leave and that she wouldn't pay a dime for his bail or legal bills. After that, they eventually backed off, but not before insulting her once again. James's case made headlines a few days after that onslaught at the door. It seems that the deception was far larger than they initially believed. Evidence that he had been transferring business funds for more than a year, some of which had been laundered through fictitious business accounts in his name, was discovered by the police. Additionally, as part of a broader inquiry, they found that he had assisted several colleagues in concealing their embezzled funds. James is now being charged with conspiracy and money laundering, in addition to fraud. He might spend a significant amount of time behind bars if convicted. The fallout has been harsh. Mr. and Miss S. Carter are really freaked out. James's reputation has been utterly destroyed after they boasted about his accomplishments to everyone they knew for years. People aren't buying into their attempts to control the situation by claiming that it's all a misunderstanding and that it will all be resolved. When word spread that his son was embroiled in a significant fraud case, Mr. Carter even lost a significant client. They're fumbling, and it's obvious they don't know what to do. Naturally, they came stumbling back to Sarah. They made no effort to conceal their desperation this time. They indicated they needed her assistance just this once to get through this because they were under a lot of stress. They insisted that they would have an opportunity to fix things and keep the family together if she helped James. But she understood exactly what that meant. Keeping the family together meant preserving the appearance that their ideal kid had done nothing wrong, and fixing things meant hiding his transgressions. They've gone completely silent after she told them no once more. Nothing. No texts, no calls. They seem to have given up on her. To be honest, they most likely view her as a hopeless failure who abandoned the family when they most needed her. But what do you know? She no longer gives a damn. She feels like she's in charge for the first time in her life. Knowing that Mr. and Miss S. Carter just saw her as a fallback option, someone to control in case something goes wrong, hurts. However, it also feels fantastic to put herself first for once and to finally say no to appease them. She won't help James, and she won't allow them to use guilt to get her to correct a situation they started. They must now deal with the repercussions of their decisions. Second update. Since many of you have been inquiring about Sarah's condition, the truth is that things have gotten even more problematic. It was James who sent her an email. Since he doesn't have access to a phone while incarcerated, he persuaded one of his friends, who still maintains his innocence, to contact her on his behalf. She was initially inclined to simply remove it without reading it, She assumed it was just another attempt to use guilt to get her to assist him. However, her curiosity overcame her, and she opened it. James said he was being framed in the email. Although he vowed he wasn't the mastermind, he acknowledged that he was a part of the fraud at his company. He claims that the superiors used him as a scapegoat to hide their own wrongdoing. He even said that while he was trapped taking the fall, certain powerful executives were still able to move freely. He pleaded with her for assistance, not for Mr. and Mrs. Carter, but because he believed that she was the only one who could save the family from disintegrating entirely. She was genuinely offended by that line. Perhaps it was because James finally admitted how poisonous their parents have been. He acknowledged that they have consistently mistreated her and exploited him to stroke their egos. Seeing him acknowledge that was odd because he had always complied with it. She couldn't get rid of the impression, though, that he was just saying anything he felt would persuade her to assist him. He also said that she should help him by saving the family, which is what Mr. and Mrs. Carter have been saying ever since this fiasco began. She kept asking herself if there was any truth to what he was saying, even though she promised herself she was done with all of this. Could it be that he was actually being set up? What if she was mistaken about how huge this was? She wanted to know for sure. Part of her, therefore, made the decision to investigate. She mentioned the problem to a buddy of hers, who is a lawyer and whom she trusted. Since they were not involved in the case, they were unable to provide her with a complete legal breakdown. However, they did offer her some guidance on where to find additional information. After doing some additional research, she discovered that James's story wasn't entirely untrue. There was no doubt that he was a fraudster. However, based on her understanding, it appeared that he wasn't the one controlling everything. Evidently, he was not the only victim of the fraud plan. James was utilized as a pawn by several high-level executives who had been transferring corporate funds for years. Since he was responsible for overseeing specific accounts, he was held solely responsible when things went south. James was left holding the bag because these superiors had purposefully separated themselves from the grunt work. Sarah felt torn after learning all of this. She was upset that he was involved in something so dubious in the first place. On the one hand, he was involved in a serious crime, regardless of whether he was the mastermind or merely a pawn. He wasn't just an innocent bystander who unknowingly became involved in anything. He followed through because he knew what he was doing. Most likely, he believed he would never be caught. However, she did feel a little sorry for him at the same time. Knowing that he was exploited by those with greater strength and expertise in hiding their trails is difficult. It's obvious that those executives were well versed in their roles and made sure James would bear the brunt of any negative outcomes. If he hadn't been raised in a household that encouraged him to take shortcuts as long as you were successful on the outside, she couldn't help but wonder how things may have turned out. He most likely believed that he was untouchable because of Mr. and Mrs. Carter's unceasing protection and adulation. Mr. and Mrs. Carter were unexpectedly silent when she told them what she had discovered, although they didn't want to acknowledge it. She believes that they secretly understood James wasn't an innocent victim. They persisted in promoting the same story, claiming that she was selfish for not prioritizing the family and callous for not assisting him, rather than admitting the reality. It was like speaking to a stone wall when you spoke to them. She's made the decision to stop interacting with them at this time. She's made up her mind, and she's sticking with it, no matter how much he wants to blame the executives. James still made his bed, and now has to lie in it. Mr. and Mrs. Carter are at fault if they wish to continue supporting him. If the situations were reversed, she wouldn't ruin herself trying to help someone who wouldn't do anything for her. To be honest, she's not felt so at ease in a long time, even though her family will never believe it. She knows she made the right decision. She's been treated like she didn't matter for far too long, and she's sick of it. Although James's predicament is awful, she is not responsible for fixing it. Once again, she wants to thank everyone who has helped her along the way. Although it hasn't been simple, it has been a huge comfort to know that she's not the only one who feels this way. Third update. Sarah now has enough information to provide you all with an update. Even though it has been more than a month since her last post, she'll start with what Mr. and Mrs. Carter did when they realized that insulting her and pleading with her wouldn't work. They made the decision to do something else, which was to make her even more miserable than she already was. They contacted several of her aunts, uncles, and cousins to express their disdain and selfishness for not helping James. They gave the impression that her refusal to assist was motivated by spite and that she was simply sitting on a mound of money. All they said was that she was a monster and should not be trusted. Only until one of her cousins contacted her and informed her that Mr. and Mrs. Carter were spreading unfavorable rumors about her did she learn the truth. They cleverly omitted the fact that they left her in the hospital and hadn't contacted her since, completely twisting the tale to make it seem like she was harboring resentment. She was only ever summoned to assist James. She was hurt at first. Even though she had defended herself, it seemed like she was being punished again. She believed that she would be left on her own with no one to support her. However, an unforeseen event occurred. Several distant relatives began contacting her rather than supporting Mr. and Mrs. Carter. It turns out that Mr. and Mrs. Carter's treatment of others and constant emphasis on James caused them to sour relations with a lot of individuals over the years. She was unaware of the depth of this. She started hearing stories from relatives she hadn't spoken to in years, and to be honest, they were all more startling than the last. James once borrowed a substantial amount of money from her husband to invest in a business venture, according to an aunt who informed her about it. Naturally, the plan failed, and Mr. and Mrs. Carter severed all ties with her aunt when she attempted to recoup her money. They even propagated the idea that her aunt was avaricious and unsupportive of her family. According to another cousin, James blamed a parking lot attendant for her uncle's car crash at a family gathering a few years ago. To keep the family from being embarrassed, Mr. and Mrs. Carter supported him and made sure the rumor didn't get out. They accused her uncle of attempting to damage James's reputation when he attempted to address them about it. There were several examples like this one where Mr. and Mrs. Carter either covered up James's wrongdoing or silenced anyone who dared to speak up. James and another family member had a business partnership, but Mr. and Mrs. Carter ruined it because they believed the relative wasn't renowned enough to be affiliated with their son. According to one relative, it was both startling and reassuring to hear all of this. She wasn't insane. It's true that Mr. and Mrs. Carter have a long history of ignoring others and hiding behind James. For a long time, she believed that she was somehow to blame for her parents' treatment of her, that perhaps she wasn't good enough or didn't live up to their standards. It was never about her, though, as she now sees. They constantly wanted to keep James safe at any cost. They even avoided family members who questioned them or obstructed their path. For those who wonder why Mr. and Mrs. Carter were so in need of her assistance, the answer is because she has established a strong life for herself in spite of their lack of encouragement. She's developed excellent relationships and managed her finances wisely in her role as project manager for a reputable IT company. She saved money and made prudent investments. Mr. and Mrs. Carter knew she had the money, which is why they were so frantic. They failed to realize, however, that she didn't want to help just because she could, especially for those who have treated her like an afterthought her whole life. There has been an update on James's case. Mr. and Mrs. Carter eventually gathered together enough cash from loans and favors to get him out of jail after Sarah refused to bail him out. However, the inquiry was far from finished. James made the decision to assist the authorities a few weeks ago, according to what she understands. He provided information about the higher-ups who were complicit in the scam, which aided in the prosecution's progress. He was able to receive a lighter sentence as a result of his cooperation. He will serve a year and then perform community service in lieu of years in prison. To be honest, that doesn't make her feel any better. His cooperation is commendable. But that doesn't change the fact that he initially decided to participate in the plot. Furthermore, she doesn't think this event will significantly alter James. She doesn't think he will quit having Mr. and Mrs. Carter clean up his mess anytime soon. For her part, she's decided to permanently cut off contact with Mr. and Mrs. Carter, which she probably should have done a long time ago. They are blocked on all of her platforms. She even instructed the front desk of her building to deny them entry if they returned without warning. She's tired of serving as their fallback option, scapegoat, emotional target. She's surprisingly not depressed about it. She had assumed that leaving her family would be a great loss, but instead, it feels liberating. She can now live her life without having to continually compare herself to James or ask for morsels of affection from people who would never show it to her. The family members who got in touch have been incredible. They've shown her that she's not alone, and she feels supported for the first time in a long time. It's weird because after years of Mr. and Miss S. Carter excluding her, she's unexpectedly found a family. In fact, she's excited to get to know these relatives better because many of them have invited her to family events that Mr. and Miss S. Carter won't be at. One of her aunts even expressed regret for not recognizing the situation sooner. She claimed that although she always thought something wasn't right with the way Mr. and Miss S. Carter treated Sarah, she kept quiet about it because she didn't want to start a fight. She is now one of Sarah's biggest supporters, along with a few other family members. For the first time, Sarah feels hopeful, even though she has no idea what the future contains. She appreciates all of your help and guidance during this trip. Reading your comments helped her realize that she wasn't insane for sticking up for herself. Even though it hasn't been easy, it feels so amazing to finally feel like she's in charge of her life. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around.